Thank you very much, Ms. Bond. So with that, I will go ahead and call this meeting of Assembly Ways and Means, Senate Finance, K-12 Higher Ed CIP meeting to order. The meeting has been duly posted and noticed and can be accessed through the Nellis website. So with that, if I could have the committee secretary please call the roll.
Senator Cannizzaro, Senator Dondero Loop,
Here.
Senator Kiefer,
Here.
Senator Ratty, Senator Severs-Gansert,
Here.
Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson,
Here.
Assemblyman Frierson, Assemblywoman Gorlow,
Here.
Assemblyman Hafen,
Here.
Assemblywoman Howdigi, Assemblyman Levitt, Assemblyman Roberts,
Here.
and Chair Carlton.
Good morning, and I am here. Thank you very much. So with that, please mark Speaker Frierson absent excused, and Ms. Howdigi is in another committee meeting at this time. It is that time of year. We are here this morning to resume our discussion on higher education. So with that, we did have a couple of items that were left to be discussed. So the game plan for this morning is basically to bring up those individual items, allow committee members to ask questions, and when we go through each item, Mr. Klinger, if you are available, if you would just give us a high-level reminder of, since you went through the whole presentation already, just a real brief overview of that item, and then we'll open it up to the different committee members for questions. I know the Chancellor had wanted to open up with a statement. So with that, if I could go ahead and recognize the Chancellor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and member of the committee. For the record, my name is Melody Rose, and I am the Chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. Thank you for the opportunity to offer brief remarks this morning. I want to also thank you for receiving our official presentation last time. I was really heartened and felt like we had a productive conversation and really good questions. I hope you've had the opportunity to review our responses, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue today. I want to just frame the comments this morning by recognizing the fluidity of our situation. While we all know that billions of dollars will be coming to the state to begin repairing the damage done by COVID, I want to express that we understand that you all will not have had the time to create a strategy and timeline for deployment of those funds. And as a result, that means you have to make tough decisions on agency budgets without consideration of the opportunity for any future add backs. In the short run, we recognize that you are faced with brutal decisions regarding trade-offs between social services, K-12, higher education, and other critical services to the state of Nevada. We sincerely hope that when the time comes for reinvestment, higher education will receive your careful consideration. As you all know, investment in higher education is critical. Short-term certificates help our displaced workers. Associate's degrees provide for middle skills, and bachelor's and research investments provide for higher skills that not only impact the lives of our students, but they all have multiplier effects on our economy. When you invest in our institutions, we can provide the scaffolding students need to retain and complete. We call these high impact practices because we know that dollars invested in student aid, advising, smaller classes, on-campus jobs, and specialized culturally specific programming deliver for Nevadans. Last time we were here, we shared with you the success that Nevada has enjoyed because of those investments that you have made. So for today, we respectfully request that you would embrace the governor's recommended budget for NSHE and ask that you refrain from additional cuts at this tenuous moment. We clearly understand that we have to do our part along with the other agencies in getting Nevada through this downturn. As you saw in my slides last time, performance of NSHE institutions around retention and completion has been steadily improving due to the investments that you have wisely made. But I would be remiss if I didn't comment on the effect that even a 12% cut will have on our students and faculty. That impact will be grave and threatens the advancements that I shared with you last time. We have provided you with examples of the impacts from each of our institutions, and I won't belabor them because you can review that document yourselves, but they boil down to this. At a 12% reduction, we will have fewer faculty, fewer advisors, larger classes, less research, which threatens our R1 status at our 2 campuses, and reduced student supports. I wouldn't be doing my job in advocating for our institutions if I were not direct with you about the consequences of this budget. And just a few remarks, if I may, on the caseload questions, which may enjoy further discussion today. For a decade, the funding formula has included caseload growth as a catch-up funding mechanism for students whom we have already served. It should be clear that presidents do their financial planning and provide vital student services with the understanding that funding for those additional students will be provided after the fact. With this look back at growth, caseload money allows us to catch up, adding faculty, advisors, and student services based on our prior growth. A cut to caseload growth effectively hits our core mission, instruction. A cut to caseload will result in a further reduction in the state's per student investment, resulting in even larger classes and fewer student services. As a result, we could expect to see erosion of the student achievement we have been working so hard to deliver for our state. If you do find that you need to cut more deeply, we would respectfully ask to be part of the solution. If the state's condition requires a deeper than 12% reduction for higher education, we would respectfully request that you provide us with a target, and we will work to come back to you with a proposal to meet that request. So the bottom line is this. We hope you will fund us at the governor's recommended budget level now and include us in the prioritization of American Rescue Plan funds once you receive clarity on the use of those funds. Thank you all very much for your time and attention and for your service to the state of Nevada at this critical moment. Andrew and I are prepared to respond to your questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chancellor, very much. We appreciate where you are coming from. I believe that statement could probably have been made from almost any cabinet member or any head of any agency in this state as far as the governor's recommended budget goes. But as far as the budget is, it's now in the legislature's hands. And I appreciate you doing your job and advocating for the folks that you work for and represent, but I'm also doing my job in making sure that we have a budget that is funded across the board and serves everyone in the state of Nevada. And I look forward to working with you as we move forward through these different budget accounts. So I do appreciate where you're coming from, but we all have a job to do, and it's not a pleasant one this legislative session when it comes to dealing with the cuts. So with that, committee members, I do have a Teams meeting open so that you can communicate with me that way if you need to. The chat function has been disabled as far as that goes. So Mr. Klinger, if there's a particular president or someone who has a statement they would like to make, or if a committee member has a direct question to one of the institutions, we'll be happy to handle it that way. So with that, I believe the first item that we need to go back to is the small institution funding. So Mr. Klinger, if you would go ahead and give us a very high level refresher on small institution funding, and then we'll go ahead and have the conversation around that.
Thank you, Chair Carlton. For the record, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer for the Nevada System of Higher Education. So the funding formula includes the small institution factor, and the small institution factor is obviously there to recognize that there is a certain threshold for the smaller institutions where they are given additional funds. So for us, that's GBC and WNC are the two institutions that receive small institution funds. And essentially the way it works is the number of weighted student credit hours below 100,000. So that to the extent those two are below 100,000, they receive an additional $30 per weighted student credit hour for those weighted student credit hours that are below that $100,000 threshold. So within the governor's budget, you see that adjustment continue. It's been in the formula from the very beginning. And with that, Chair Carlton, happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you, Mr. Klinger, very much so. Committee members, are there any particular questions on the small institution funding? It's something that we've addressed over the last couple of sessions in order to be able to alleviate any unintended consequences to the smaller institutions as they move through this new funding regime that was set up. Are there any questions? I don't believe I see any questions from any committee members at this time. Let me change my view just in case. It's hard to see. I don't believe so. All right. Thank you all very much. So with that, I believe our next item on the agenda would be the research, operations and maintenance, the O&M as we affectionately call it. So Mr. Klinger, if you would give us a brief overview on O&M, I'm sure there's going to be some questions on this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, for the record, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer. So the research factor is another one of the adjustments that is made in the funding formula, and again, has been in the formula from the beginning. And this recognizes the research mission of the two universities. And so the two universities receive additional funding in addition to the weighted student credit hour portion of the formula. They receive funding from the state for the research space that they have on each of their campuses. And essentially the way that calculation works is we look at the total space that each of those institutions has. We divide that by the total cost of O&M, and we come up with a rate per square footage for the overall O&M. And then we multiply that by that space that is dedicated to research, and each of the two universities receives an adjustment based on that rate. And so again, in the governor's budget, you see the adjustments for both of the universities for that research O&M space.
Thank you, Mr. Klinger. So with that, I do believe I have some questions. I think Senator Ratty wanted to tee it up this morning.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Klinger. Can you just broadly talk about what efforts both UNR and UNLV have made to expand their research capacity? We learn a lot about how important research capacity is to our state, to the sustainability of the university. So what are we doing to expand it? What did we do in this last biennium, and what are you planning for the next biennium?
Madam Chair, to you and through you, I would recommend that we call upon the presidents of the two research institutions who can give you further detail to the question.
All right, thank you.
Brian, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Brian, for the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, Reno, to you and through you to Senator Ratty. I will tell you one massive investment that UNR has made recently is a $20 million investment that we made to our chemistry and physics labs to modernize them. They are located in a 50-year-old building and were in serious need of updating. So we have made a dramatic investment just recently in that regard without using state money. So in that regard, that's the biggest addition for us with regard to our research facilities. Thank you.
And to follow up, any plans for this upcoming biennium?
Certainly. I mean, we're going to continue to finish the updates to those labs, and we are looking to find resources to continue, our research mission. We did approximately $160 million. We've increased our research funding by 50 to 60 million within the last 6 years, and we hope to continue to do that some more. But yes, we have to do that in order to maintain our R1 status. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, President Sandoval. And I believe we can go to President Whitfield next.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. For the record, Keith Whitfield, President of UNLV. And to Senator Ratty's question, for us, our current work is on, it's a series of buildings, I think it's three buildings that were formerly owned by the EPA. These are very old buildings, but we're able to retrofit them and provide additional wet lab space. And that's what we're currently working on. It's a project, I believe, that's around $12 million. Critically important for us to be able to grow our research portfolio, particularly in STEM fields that need wet lab space and even some dry lab space. In addition to that, as you know, we are building out our medical school, and that's going to be a critical piece of research dollars that are brought in. Academic medical research actually yields very good profit, great advances in terms of what we learn, and in terms of securing that R1 status, it's absolutely critical. So those are our plans for the future. We don't have specific ones other than some plans perhaps for a clinical research facility that would not only serve our university, but serve others who might want to come and use the different facilities that we might have there. And it could range from MRIs to high pressure electric chromatography, whatever it may be. But those are our plans for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, President Whitfield. And as an aside, you have an Airstream trailer in the corner of your screen, so we're going to have to get to know each other a little bit better. So I would like to follow up on that, and I think this is back to Director Klinger. So operations and maintenance, it's an ongoing cost. It's going to increase at least by inflationary pressures and probably some more given some of the things that we're facing as a state. Can you just walk me through how much of this is state general fund funded? How much of this is supported by other funds that either the universities have available to them or NG is? We're just trying to get a handle on, is this going to be something that the state just needs to keep an eye on that will be a continuing growing cost, or is this something that is also helped by the other funding streams that you have?
For the record, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer, to Senator Ratty. I don't have the breakdown of the funds. I mean, certainly there are self-supporting funds that support, operations and maintenance on the campus. As it relates, specifically to this formula adjustment, the formula adjustment for research O&M space is 100% funded with general fund. But having said that, there are other funds that support operations and maintenance on the campuses, and certainly can get those details for you on that breakdown.
Thank you. We'd appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. I'll go to Senator Sievers-Ganser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just following up on Senator Ratty's question on research. So I know we're on the O&M budget, but something that's key is faculty. And so I was wondering if the presidents wanted to comment on the investment in faculty and the efforts made, because our R1 is such a high level. It's such a huge boost to the reputation of the universities. And I know it has to do with the people too. So I thought you might want to comment on the investments in faculty.
Senator Stevens, Keith Whitfield, President of UNLV for the record. You hit on one of the most important things that we have, and that's the people that we have. We are growing in terms of our capabilities, but we have to have more people who are research oriented. If you look at the history of UNLV, we're a fairly young school, and we are changing from what used to be, I think, mainly a teaching mission to a divided position, which is a research and teaching mission. And one of the wonderful things I think about the point that you raise is that the research mission actually helps the teaching mission as well. And so the investment in faculty who are tenure track faculty who conduct research is critically important, not only for the research dollars that we bring in to establish our R1 category or our R1 status, which is representative of only about 10% of schools in the country. It is extremely valuable and important. It draws a lot of attention to our schools for lots of different reasons. And it's a tractor. I guess it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. We will get better faculty because we hold that rank, because they know the kind of work that we do and the facilities that we have. The inability to be able to hire more faculty stagnates us. I worry greatly because as we come out of this, there is a lot of competition for good faculty. And if we don't have the funds to be able to actually position ourselves to hire those faculty, they're going to go to other schools, they're going to have other opportunities, and it will produce a situation where we fall a bit behind and that we could be at risk of actually losing R1 status. With that, thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, to you and through you again, for the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, to Senator Sievers-Gansert. I'd like to adopt President Whitfield's remarks by reference because they apply to our campus as well. One of the impacts associated with the budget is the fact that we have approximately 35 faculty positions that do research that we are holding vacant, which is going to affect our ability to continue our strong mission of research. Also, we jealously guard our Carnegie status as an R1 high research institution. It's extremely important in our ability to attract students and attract faculty to our campus. And as the president said, we need to preserve that. And so that's pretty much where we are, and we'll continue to navigate through this. But certainly we are missing out on a great opportunity to bring in more faculty and students as a result of the budget cuts. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Gansert. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, President Sandoval. We appreciate that. So just for the committee, we have a lot of new members on the committee. If you could remind me when the R1 status actually occurred, and I know that was a decision made at the university level. That was not a partnership decision between the university and the legislature. So what year did the universities achieve R1 status?
Madam Chair, for the record, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, Reno. We were officially recognized in January of 2019.
Right. And Mr. Whitfield?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I believe it was the same year for us as well. And correctly, as you stated, that wasn't something that was done to the legislature. That is something that's established. I can't even think of who establishes that, but it is done by looking at different things like research expenditures, graduate student graduations, how much money we're getting and spending that are in multiple federal categories. Primarily a little bit from private ones can be added, but not much. But that's that throughput work as well as our success with students. And I believe it was the same time our two universities both achieved that mark. And I believe that it was earlier than expected as well, because we were on such a great trajectory.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure folks understood exactly what the process was. in that, since we're talking about, partnerships and working together. So I guess the underlying question I'm going to have is the way O&M has worked in the past. Is we look at the square footage, a dollar amount is associated with it. You come before us with a request to help support that. We're not part of the decision process in establishing if you go out and get those EPA buildings, if you build that chemistry lab. But once that's been accomplished, you come back and have a conversation with us about supporting those projects. I think I would be very interested in understanding exactly how much comes in grants, how much other dollars that come in outside of the state budget that might be possibly used to accomplish that square footage calculation, how that all fits together. So I'm looking forward to you being able to provide us with those documents so that we understand exactly where we are with it. It's one of those budgets that will constantly grow because it sort of feeds itself. So will always be going up a little bit, but I think having a real understanding of all the different components that go into supporting research and the operations and the maintenance of all those facilities would be very helpful moving forward, especially at this time when we're looking at every dollar being very, very valuable. So I look forward to getting that information from you in the future. So committee members, if there's no other questions on the O&M budget, I believe, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Senator Kekeffer, I put it in the teams, but I don't know.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. I'm trying to manage too many different things. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to follow up just a little bit on the discussion of funding for research, and it fits in with both O&M and I think personnel, as Senator Seavers-Ganser touched on. And during our initial hearing, you presented that the state funding per student per FTE was at or above the national average in terms of how much the state commits to students within the system. We've also, tried to ensure that we continue making our institutions affordable for students. So our student fees for tuition and enrollment are lower than national average, which sort of has this compounding effect of maybe providing lower funding for our institutions than some of the national average, because we try to keep it affordable for our students. So what are the other avenues of revenue available to institutions for research funding? Where do your peers find funding outside of state appropriations and student fees that they can commit to research that helps elevate them into the higher tiers of our status?
Madam Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
If I may begin, for the record, Melody Rose, Chancellor of the Nevada System of Higher Education. If I may just offer a broad response to you and through you to Senator Kekeffer. It's a great question and I appreciate it. And you have remembered those data points perfectly from the last presentation. And keeping that student price point low, of course, is a point of pride for us. And it results in our students having greater access to our classrooms and our research opportunities. But at the same time, as you note, that leaves us with fewer total revenues generated by the student. And so that's a balancing act that every institution has to face. And in the realm of research, we truly view, and will be demonstrable in the data that we provide you, we truly view every dollar invested by the state in research as having a multiplier effect. And so I think what you will find when we submit further detail around this question is exactly that. So there, of course, we know that there are some very significant federal funding sources for research. Our institutions are applying and winning those grants. And I would say too that the two R1 institutions as well as DRI are all on an upward trajectory in terms of their capture rate of those of those opportunities federally. So the work that you all have done to invest in research is paying dividends for us. As well, of course, there are private sources and public-private partnerships that can contribute to that overall portfolio. And I think you will see that in the area of research, success breeds success. So once you see this R1 status attained and you see those numbers beginning to grow, they tend to grow at higher and higher rates. And so that's why the investment that you all make is so critical to the success on other fronts. And I don't know, Madam Chair, if the presidents of the 3 research institutions have further detail to provide, but I think that provides Senator Kekeffer with a general sense of our strategy.
President Whitfield?
Yes, Chair. Keith Whitfield, President of UNLV. For Senator Kekeffer's point, I think the Chancellor said it absolutely perfectly. There is a multiplier effect that ends up happening, that once we establish ourselves as experts and places where research can be done, that draws the attraction of private companies, that draws the development of private companies. And one of the goals in this whole process is the idea that some of our researchers, even some of our students, would actually spin off companies. And we do want to encourage them to actually stay here and do that work. There's intellectual properties, there's technology transfer, there's licensure. Those things can generate money, but it's the initial investment that's absolutely critical to get that started, to build that infrastructure. And then at some point in the future, I think the hope is that there's less of a reliance. You almost become its own little separate corporation that can develop and spin out different resources that are made to be able to build research capacity in that way. And I would just add, I think around the medical school, actually UNR is a perfect example of that, because there's been some work like that that's happened up there. And that's our goal as well, is to be able to not only have a great medical center that provides services and care for people, but also that citizens here will be able to get cutting edge drugs, care, because the research is actually being done here. And so it is that investment, just as the Chancellor noted. Thank you very much.
And thank you, President Whitfield. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
Madam Chair, may I? This is DRI President.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you. Kamud Acharya, President of DRI. Senator, I just wanted to make sure that another point, I just wanted to add to what President Whitfield and Chancellor said. Once you have the infrastructure, it's very easy to attract more research dollars and hire more people, support more students, more postdoc. But really, when you apply for grants and contracts, it's difficult to justify or asking money for building infrastructure so that you can do the research. So that's why that the basic infrastructure investment is key to bringing in more money to the institutions. So that's why, I mean, usually you can't really ask for, let's say, building a building, building a lab. Once you have a lab, you can ask for doing research there. And that's why the investment is so critical. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, President Sandoval.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, really good at raising your hand. I really love that. Thank you.
My mom taught me well, but thank you, Madam Chair, and to you and through you to Senator Kekeffer. Again, I'll adopt the very profound comments made by the Chancellor and President Whitfield and President Acharya. The only thing I'll add is that this research mission and these research dollars that come in are critical for our students, and it's critical for workforce development. So what I'm seeing in my experience is our students that are participating in the research are getting recruited and hired by the companies that are coming here to Nevada, and it provides them just amazing opportunities to get a leg up in the workforce. So that's the only thing I'll add, is that, again, on top of what my colleagues have said, it's very beneficial for workforce development as well as the students. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Kekeffer.
Thank you, President Sandoval. So with that, I would like to go ahead and recognize Ms. Benitez Thompson.
Thank you so much. And it's just a comment that I heard just as we're having this conversation, which is, I think, is a really good one and a really important one. But I did hear that we're going to start kind of referencing multipliers and bringing multipliers in the conversation. And I get that, and I understand the logic around that. I would just say that my experience this is just my legislative perspective as a legislator with multipliers is they really tend to be very overly optimistic, and it can be quite hard over time to follow out how those multipliers reach out, like kind of trickle out and trickle down. And they get, I would say, a little bit, if you do a 10-year look back on what multipliers might have suggested, it can get more squishy and less easier for folks sitting in these chairs to follow. I would say that probably sticking to those measurable objectives makes much more sense, because then we just have really clear-cut, identifiable things that we're going to measure moving forward and that we can benchmark from year to year. And so that whenever we talk about multipliers, I always get a little bit nervous, because I think they can represent our most optimistic hope for what dollars do. And looking back on our most optimistic look and hopes and thoughts, I don't think always presents you down the road with the fairest frame to acknowledge what actual measurable objectives there are. So that's just my one.
Madam Chair, Chancellor Rose, for the record, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you to you and through you to Assemblywoman Benitez Thompson. I appreciate your feedback on that and understand where you're coming from. Of course, when we provide written responses to today's conversation, we'll make sure that in the areas where we talk about multipliers, that they are actuals, not projections. So that may help to some degree. But I just want to say that I very much appreciate your request for measurables and for benchmarks. And I will share, as I think I have in the past in other settings with all of you, that the presidents and I are working through a project to make sure that we are providing more of those metrics and targets around each of our 5 strategic goals, research being one of them. And we had a lengthy conversation, the 9 of us, on Monday to establish some of those metrics and targets. And we believe very, very firmly that it is our commitment to you as our investors that we establish those and that we report regularly on them for our own accountability and transparency with the public dollars that you invest. So I appreciate the point, and just please know that we are working very hard to be able to deliver that to you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on this particular issue at this time? Seeing no one, so we look forward to getting the answers to the questions. I think the president's made excellent points about bringing more research dollars in and how those dollars benefit the state. We just want to be able to have a full picture of exactly what is coming in, where it's going, how it's being spent. That's kind of the task that we are charged with during the legislative session. So we appreciate you supplying all that data for us so that we can make the decisions based not on anecdote any longer, but on actual dollars that are coming into the state. So I believe our next item that we need to discuss will be the capacity enhancement funding, increasing capacity system-wide. And so Mr. Klinger, I think I'm going to start it off with a question, and I'm going to let you expand a little bit, possibly the chancellor. We have a number of new members on this committee that were not here in the original discussions of what this 5-year plan for capacity building was supposed to be. So if you would go over that a little bit, and then where are we with the 5-year plan, I think is the first question we need to get on the record, and then I think we can move from there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer. So this has been presented. This will be the 3rd biennium that the capacity enhancement funding has been presented. And so what is included in the governor's executive budget is $10.9 million per year in what we call capacity enhancement funding. And that funding is intended to allow the institutions to expand their programs, in particular in the area of workforce development. Now, when this was originally presented, it was presented that fiscal years 22 and 23 that we're talking about now would actually, that funding would increase relative to where we're at currently. Given the pandemic and the downturn in the economy, the funding that's included in fiscal 22 and 23 has been kept flat at the same level as the fiscal year 21 funding. And so what I can say to your question, Madam Chair, about where is this program? So fiscal year 22 and 23 are years 4 and 5 of this program. And so this would be the end of the program as it was originally presented. Madam Chair, and I'm sure other committee members will remember, we had a discussion 2 years ago about whether this funding would continue in base or whether it would be considered one-time funding. The committee and the legislature made the decision 2 years ago, or reiterated the decision maybe, that this is one-time funding. So we are presenting to you years 4 and 5, and this is the end of the program that as it was originally presented. Now, having said that, there will certainly be needs in the future of these institutions as it relates to expanding programs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klinger, for that very concise and well put overview. I do appreciate that. So committee members, I'll open it up for questions. Senator Dondero Luke, did you have a question on this one?
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think you sort of covered how it's changed from the original 2019 legislature. If you have anything to add to that, please do so. But in that answer, would you also explain how the program has established through the capacity enhancement funding, how that funding in the 23-25 biennium, given that the 5-year plan ends in fiscal year 23?
Madam Chair, for the record, Andrew Klinger to Senator Dondero Luke. And so we've talked about that a little bit internally on what does the next biennium look like? Because again, as this has been originally presented, this is years 4 and 5 of the capacity enhancement funding. Now, some of these, and these programs take time to begin to generate weighted student credit hour. And that really is part of the goal here, is to create these programs, have them generate weighted student credit hours and obviously student income, and sort of have them self-sustaining. Now that obviously isn't happening completely with all of these programs. I mean, there's areas where these funds have been used for student advising and other things that aren't necessarily generating weighted student credit hours. So to your question about the future biennium, that is something that we will have to plan for on how to address it, because if these funds go away in the next biennium, and based on this program they're scheduled to, there will be gaps at some of the institutions as it relates to these programs. And certainly I would defer to them to talk about that.
Thank you very much. So do you have any plans to support the ongoing costs of that program?
Madam Chair, for the record, Andrew Klinger, I think at this point, the ongoing costs for the programs that have generated the weighted student credit hours and are sort of stood up, if you will become part of the base budget. For those that are relying on these one-time funds, if those funds don't continue in the future biennia, those programs would have to either cease to exist, or the campuses would have to find other resources. If additional state funding wasn't provided, they'd have to find other resources to continue those programs.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any other questions from any other committee members? At this time, I want to make sure I'm checking all the screens that I have in front of me right now. Not seeing anyone else wishing to be recognized. Thank you very much, Mr. Klinger, for the explanation. And I won't be here next session, but I think being able to leave this as part of the record behind so that future committees will understand what our commitment was, how we worked towards this 5-year plan, where it actually is, the capacity that was done in the last legislative session towards the towards the community college system and towards DRI, because that seemed to be where the focus needed to be last time. So we are gradually, I want to say, weaning ourselves off of this and setting up a system that will have a good budgeting process in the future. So I appreciate your explanation on that. So I believe our next item that we need to address this morning is the Desert Research Institute. So whoever you would like to have do that overview, that would be fine. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer, maybe I will just start and just talk about the current funding formula and let President Acharya add in if necessary. So the way the current funding formula works for the Desert Research Institute, it's obviously separate from the weighted student credit hour funding formula that we've been talking about. It is based largely on the amount of grants and contract dollars that come into the Desert Research. And so there's different tiers of funding, that state funding that is generated based on the level of contracts. So from a 0 to 25 million level for grants and contracts, 12% of that then is calculated as state support. As you go up and go from 25 to 30, there's 7.5% in funding that's available from the state. 30 to 35 million, there's 6%. And then everything above 35 million is 5%. And I think, Madam Chair, as we've talked about in the past, and I know we talked about this 2 years ago, there are some challenges with this current funding formula for the Desert Research Institute. And we certainly had intended to present to you this biennium a new funding formula for the Desert Research Institute. But with the pandemic and changes in leadership at the Institute, we were unable to do that. And so we would ask that we be able to come back next biennium with a new funding formula for the Desert Research Institute. And so with that sort of technical answer to your question on an overview of DRI, I would certainly defer to President Acharya if there's other things to add.
And thank you very much, Mr. Klinger. And I totally understand. I won't think that you're trying to do it without me, but that's okay. So that's fine. Actually, I'm perfectly fine with the next team handling that one. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to President Acharya, and then we do have some questions.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andrew. So this is a very difficult discussion for DRI. When this was instituted in the Great Recession, actually, this was not the percentages that DRI had proposed. So, but this is what was given to us. But what that led to the DRI's budget was initially it cut $1 million from our budget even that year. So, in addition, the formula also incorporated like FY15 furloughs. We have to ask for amendments every time because of that. And there are some serious challenges. The funding formula shortfall is we have to come up with our self-supporting budget. So I think that as Andrew alluded to this one, we intended to bring it to you this year, but we decided that this was not a good year. But we're truly appreciative of whatever we are getting because I think that DRI is doing quite well right now in terms of bringing research grants and contracts. So, Madam Chair, unless you have some specific questions, obviously this is our budget, the state portion of our budget has obviously gone down with this funding formula, but hopefully in the future we can bring it back. And so if you have any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer this.
Okay, thank you, President. Assemblywoman Gorla, did you have a question on this item?
Yes, Chair Carlton, thanks so much. Just a quick question. I was wondering if the current formula that you're using, is it meeting the institutional's operating needs? And if not, what needs aren't being met?
Thank you so much. This is Kamir Acharya, President of DRI. It is right now short of what our institution's need is. What we're doing is we are keeping positions vacant. We are also using our ICR, which is the overhead we generate from grants and contracts. We're using that money to supplement the shortfall. Otherwise, we would invest that money into our faculty. And so it is obviously not helping us to grow as much as we would like to grow. Right now, I think our budget, even without the pandemic budget cut, we are about $1 million less than what we used to get to run our institute.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Committee members, are there any other questions for DRI? Seeing no one wishing to be recognized, thank you very much. We realize this has been a unique experience for DRI, and there have been challenges for a while, and I look forward to a good conversation on how to address those challenges in the future moving forward. So thank you very much for that. So I think our next item that we need to go to is checking my list to make sure I don't skip anything, is the Nevada Teach program. So if you could give us just a brief overview on that. I think most of us are familiar with that from last session and the 17 session. So brief overview, and then we'll ask our questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly can start, and then President Sandoval, if he wants to jump in. So this continues. There is a $150,000 a year included in the governor's executive budget, and this allows students to pursue a teaching license for middle or high school while also earning a comprehensive STEM degree. Last biennium, there was a $300,000 one-shot that was put into the Nevada Teach program, and this time the governor's budget includes $150,000 per year. And so with that, I would turn it over to President Sandoval.
Good morning again, Madam Chair. Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, Reno. For the record, Mr. Klinger is correct. It is $150,000 per year. And it's a specific program, frankly, that we approved in the budget when I was serving across the lawn. But it's been very well done. And in fact, it's fully subscribed in terms of producing more teachers in science, technology, engineering, and math, and has been extremely successful. And in fact, we're seeking private donations as well to enhance our efforts in the rural counties where there's been a shortage of those types of teachers, and sending the teachers to those areas so that the K-12 students out there can be the beneficiaries of that curriculum. But it's been very successful. So if you need more specifics, Madam Chair, we'll be happy to provide them. Thank you.
I believe there are some questions that are probably going to ask you for some specifics, but thank you, President Sandoval. I remembered when you served across the lawn. So knowing that we've done something that is actually working is very gratifying. Thank you. It's nice to look back and see things working. So with that, I believe Senator Dondero-Loop has a question.
Thank you so much, Chair Carlton, and thank you, President Sandoval. I still have a hard time saying that, but it's great to see you. What program outcomes can be reported based on the successes of the Nevada Teach program in the current biennium?
Madam Chair, to you and through you, to the Senator Dondero Loop. We have 26 students right now that are participating in the program. I can obviously provide you with more specifics in terms of the amount of students that we have placed, but again, it's fully subscribed with the monies that have been provided in the budget. And again, it's a very special program in terms of having students with the dual skills and having the teaching certificate, but along with some really specific curriculum associated with science, technology, engineering, and math, particularly in today's environment. And I think it's very beneficial for the students as they matriculate from K through 12 to the universities, our K through 12 students. And again, as I speak or have had the opportunity to speak with the respective superintendents, they're very grateful for the program, but happy to provide you with more specifics.
I'd so appreciate that. And with that, is there a waiting list, or are we just sort of filling those positions and then we get about the right amount of students who want to do that, or do we actually have a waiting list?
Yeah, Madam Chair, through you to Senator Dondero Loop, I will check that. My understanding is that that the program is fully subscribed with 26 students, so every dollar has been spent and well spent. And there likely are students that would like to get into the program, but again, I will provide you that information as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Other questions from other committee members on this particular program? Seeing none, as I said, it's nice to see something that's working. Once we get it working in one place, maybe we should have conversations about if it will work in other places also. So are there any other, Senator, did you think of something?
I did. I have one follow-up to President Whitfield or whoever may choose to answer this. Do we have any programs like this at UNLV or any other NSC, any of the other institutions?
Yes,
Mr. Whitfield.
thank you, Chairwoman Carlton. Yes, we do. We actually have 85 students so far that have participated since 2016. They are in curriculum instruction, early childhood education, elementary education and human services, and special ed. And currently we're funding the participation of that through internal resources. So there's no special funding from the state, but because it's an excellent model, we've adapted and joined that effort as well.
Madam Chair, may I contribute to the answer as well?
Chancellor, please go ahead.
Thank you. For the record, Melody Rose, Chancellor, to you and through you to Senator Dondero Loop. I appreciate you asking that question because I think what you're really getting at is why don't you take a good thing and take it to scale? And I'm really pleased to share, as I think many of you are aware, that I have a really wonderful partnership emerging with State Superintendent Ebert. And she and I have been working with the education programs over the past month and are poised to announce shortly a task force that will be jointly staffed by our organizations to really dig in to the teacher pipeline conversation. And as I have come to understand in the state of Nevada, this is a major workforce need. And not just in terms of numbers of teachers to satisfy our classroom needs, but also the diversification of that teaching core. And so I can't share the details here right now, but we are looking forward to examining all of the good work that's going on the campuses and figuring out what we can take to scale to really accelerate the results that President Sandoval is mentioning. So just want you to know that's on the horizon, and we'll be reporting more to you on this very shortly.
Chair Carlton?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, President Barb Patterson, Nevada State College, and through you to Senator Dondero Loop. So we don't have the exact same program that UNR has in terms of the Teach Nevada which arises out of the University of Texas program related to STEM. But we do have students that do get dual degrees in the sciences as well as in education. Our major focus, and the Chancellor alluded to this as well, we've been very focused on teacher academies, which the legislature helped fund through the capacity growth, or through the capacity growth initiatives was one of those programs. And with that legislative funding, in addition to private funding, those programs are in 10 high schools now, where we're getting students early credits toward education and then moving on toward an education degree. And we had an uptick of 35% in freshmen declaring education as a major. In addition, those capacity growth funds are helping us start the early childhood education degree in the new Christensen School of Education building that will start this fall, which is really terrific. So the legislature's been a great partner. We don't have any specific funding from the legislature beyond that, but we do have things like the Silver State Opportunity Grant and other scholarships that teachers are teaching, students are going to teaching are eligible for. So there's a variety of things that are happening in this space. We're really growing out our education programs, including statewide. We have affiliations with Western Nevada and Truckee Meadows Community College to graduate more teachers in partnership with them. So it's a team effort across the state and with the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have no doubt that everybody's working to increase our teacher pipeline, and please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to help, and thank you all.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, President Patterson. So with that, I believe our next item for discussion and our last item for discussion this morning, depending upon where the committee has questions, is the new position request. So if you could give us a high-level overview, Mr. Klinger, or whoever's taking that one, and then we will ask our questions about the new positions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer for the Nevada System of Higher Education. So there are approximately 264 new positions included in the governor's executive budget, and they are all funded with funds other than state general funds. So they're either funded with grant funds, registration fees. Now, some of these positions are sort of true ups from funding from last biennium, where the positions were not specifically included in the budget, and so now we're adding them. Some of them truly are new positions, and they're spread out over several different budgets and several different decision units. So, Madam Chair, perhaps it would be best for me to just pause and see if there are specific questions.
So I think the first question is going to be how do you track all this?
Madam Chair, so we have our financial system where we track, the funding that we receive from the state, as well as the registration fees. As you know, there is a dedicated portion of the registration fees that come into the state operating budget. So it's looking at those various sources of funds and determining, as you fund caseload growth, for example, that funding is then converted into positions to support the additional students. And so those decisions are made as the institutions, I should say, plan their budgets for each one of the fiscal years. And so essentially that's how we keep track of it.
So it's my understanding that a number of the positions that are being funded, especially when it comes to the ones being funded through registration fees, are actually funded with the associated operating expenditures with it. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I might defer to the institutions on that. Are you asking if they are, because I know there are some, Madam Chair, and I don't, maybe this is your question. There are some where we are taking what was operating dollars and converting those into positions, and perhaps that is your question. And that is, if that is your question, the answer is yes, there are some of those positions included in the budget.
But then I need to clarify, I believe some of the positions are being funded with registration fees. And in addition to the position, the registration fees are also going to be funding some of the operating expenses associated with that position. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure with it, we have operating all over the place here. So we just want to make sure that we're perfectly clear on that. So I guess trying to figure out how you reconcile the decisions that the Board of Regents make, that when they approve positions, the actual budgeted expenditures for positions, and then the legislatively approved budgets each biennium for positions. So is there a document that you can share with us that shows how you navigate all these different positions? Basically, I guess what I'm asking for is a fund map when it comes to positions.
Yeah, Madam Chair, for the record, Andrew Klinger, Chief Financial Officer. So we do produce, so as you, I think, stated well, you know, the legislature approves our budget. We then take it to the board. The institutions take that budget and they present to the board within the same dollar amount, but may, you know, take those caseload growth dollars, for example, and convert those positions. And then that budget is approved by the Board of Regents. What we don't produce, and we can certainly put that together, what we don't produce, I think, is what you're asking for, which is essentially the fund map that shows here's the legislatively approved budget, here's the changes, and here's the Board of Regents approved budget, which I think is what you're asking for. And we can certainly provide that. We don't typically produce a document like that.
Well, we're getting late into session, so trying to put something like that together, I just want to make sure that it's well worthwhile. But I think when we're talking about using registration fees to fund positions, and then there are positions that are funded through grants, they're all funded in different ways. And I know when I look at budget breakdowns in a lot of the other areas, I can look at, let's just take HHS as an example. I can look to see positions. Are they grant funded? Is it a federal grant? Is it a state grant? Is it tobacco funds? How it all breaks down. So if there's something that gets close to that so that we can understand it a little bit better, I am hesitant to ask for a new document because I have gotten stuff from you guys and you are really good at putting documents together, let me tell you. And it takes myself and a couple of other folks to sort through it with multiple color markers. So I don't want anything too complicated, but I think it would be really good for us to understand exactly, you know, how positions are funded. And there have been times in the past, I won't say it's current, where the legislature has approved funds to go in one direction, and through the regents process, those funds kind of went in a different direction. So we just kind of want to understand where all the money actually lies and what it's actually funding, especially when it comes to registration fees. So if you would please work with our staff on that. I don't want to make it to I do not want to make this complicated. I just want to be able to get an idea of, you know, research dollars going towards certain things. We just want to get a feel for exactly what the whole pie of your budget really looks like. And we've had that discussion in the past about different budgets that you have and looking at the whole pie of your budget and how it works. So if you would work with our staff on that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Madam Chair, happy to work with your staff, and I think we can put together maybe just a high-level document that you're looking for, because I agree it could get very detailed and very complicated real quickly. So, but I'm confident we can put something high-level together.
Okay. Committee members, are there other questions when it comes to the new positions?
Chair, this is Senator Reddy. I have a question.
Yes, Senator, please proceed.
Thank you. And I need to ask this question because I'm going to get this question. So at the prior budget hearing, when we talked about the impact of the budget cuts, and I appreciate some of the documentation that's been sent to me by UNR to explain the impact, but we also talked that there would be some layoffs. And I think it was the only institution where we were going to see some layoffs. And then in this budget, we're seeing requests for new positions. Excuse me. So I just need to be able to articulate how we are, on the one hand, talking about layoffs, and on the other hand, talking about new positions.
Yeah, Madam Chair, for the record, Andrew Klinger, through the chair to Senator Ratty, I'm not sure. I'll let the institutions, specifically President Sandoval, speak to the layoffs. But I guess just at a high level, it is just the difference in the source of funds, because there are, as you know, there are positions that are funded with state general fund dollars, and then there are positions that are funded with the student revenue fees. So it does depend on the funding source. And I think for the most part, what UNR is doing, and again, President Sandoval can jump in, is it's through attrition. As positions become vacant and as positions retire, I know they are holding those positions vacant, similar to all of the institutions, to meet the savings necessary to meet the 12% budget reduction cuts. But I'll let President Sandoval specifically talk about any potential layoffs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To you and through you to Senator Ratty, Brian Sandoval, President of the University of Nevada, Reno, for the record. The first comment is those requests for those new positions were pre 12% budget cuts. And so we won't be adding new positions. What we've done is exactly what Mr. Klinger has said, is that we have kept positions open, and the intent of that is to avoid any potential layoffs. So as I sit here today, we haven't eliminated any positions, but obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the next, through the remainder of the legislature. But our hope is to avoid any possible layoffs, but I can't say that we can rule it out depending on the outcome of the legislative session and your budget decisions.
And thank you for that answer, President Sandoval. And I don't mean to be challenging, I really don't, but I believe that it was in the information that we had in the last session that there were 6 that were slated for layoffs, and that the testimony was that was what would be, that in addition to holding vacancies and all of the other things, that there were specific positions identified for layoff. So if I'm misunderstanding that, I'd like to make sure that that's clear on the record before, because I'm, again, getting questions from folks about that potential eventuality.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To you and through you to Senator Ratty. Again, our hope is to avoid any potential layoffs, but I can't be, I have to be transparent and honest with our constituencies that I can't rule it out. It all is dependent upon the outcome of the legislative session. We've worked very closely with the deans and the VPs across campus for them to present their proposals in terms of how we're going to meet those 12% budget cuts. And some of the presentation on their part has included potential layoffs. But again, through attrition, through keeping positions open, we're making every effort to avoid any potential layoffs.
And I very much appreciate that. And I think we all want to work on that together. So if I could just ask for some follow-up information, because it really is the contrast with the request for new positions and the potentiality of layoffs that I think is going to be the challenging conversation. I think everybody understands we're in a challenging place as a state. So understanding that those requests came in before the 12% cuts, if you can just follow up with me offline of how these new positions fit in or don't fit into specifically UNR, I think that would be a helpful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To you through to Senator Ratty. Absolutely, we'll provide you with that information.
Right. So committee members, I'm going over my list and I believe I've checked everything off that I think committee needed to address this morning, but these are all very complicated budgets. And she's very important to all of us. And if there's any questions, and especially our newer members, I know this has been a lot of information, and especially doing it in 2 different meetings can sometimes make it a little more challenging. So if there are any questions that you have, I want you to feel comfortable. You have the team in front of you right now to be able to ask your questions. So if there's anything that you would like to address, now is the time. Senator Kickover, did you have something?
I do, Madam Chair. Thank you. I appreciate that. And this was a question that I think I'd spoken briefly about with Mr. Klinger. So hopefully it's answered. If I'm looking at sort of the document that's been presented as GovRec, and I'll use UNR as an example, we get broad categories for expenditures, personnel, service, operating, all of those sorts of things. For UNR in particular, there seems to be a really dramatic reduction in expenses related to academic support and student support. And if I could get some detail about what's included in those categories, that would be helpful. I'm nervous that that is where huge reductions are getting made while we're about to have a massive influx of particularly freshmen who haven't stepped foot in the classroom for a year, potentially, and that those are the types of supports that may be needed now more than ever. So you can tell me what's in those categories. That would be helpful.
Chair Carl. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Andrew, you go first.
Chair Carlton, for the record, Andrew Klinger to Senator Kieckeffer. It's my understanding that those reductions are in those categories that you specifically mentioned, are the result of the budget reductions that have been made. And I'll let President Sandoval speak to it, and we certainly can follow up with more detail about what is in those various categories that you're looking for.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To you and through to Senator Kieckeffer. So I guess the first comment with regard to those student services is we were able to use the CARES Act money. So there was no reduction whatsoever in student services as we speak now. The concern is moving forward. And again, what the budget looks like, and that's where the potential harm comes, is with regard to the 12% cuts, is it could affect our advisement and other student services that we provide. But again, I'm happy to provide details, Senator Kieckeffer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I worry that these are students who are going to need support now more than ever, considering their last year of high school experience was perhaps not as rigorous as we wanted it to be, through distance learning or whatever the case may be. So I understand the choices have to be made. I just worry about what it may mean for our students. And then finally, Madam Chair, is more of a comment than anything. We didn't touch on it previously. I also have concerns about reduction that's been proposed in the governor's budget to the Silver State Opportunity Grant. This is a needs-based scholarship program for low-income students to attend our colleges on a full-time basis and help them move up the economic ladder. And I think it's been successful. I obviously have personal interest in it since it was a bill I initially sponsored. But as we look for perhaps some moving pieces in this budget, I think that targeting student support is a difficult place to go. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator, very much. We appreciate that. And any documents, just please provide them to staff. We'll make sure that they get to all members of the committee. Senator Sievers-Ganser, did you have a question or a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a follow-up question. When we had the graphs on graduation rates, and I think Nevada Reno was at 61% and UNLV had escalated. I just wanted to know if there's been any analysis of the correlation between the student support, the student services, and the rise in graduation rates, really amongst all institutions, but I really noted the increase in the UNLVs and UNRs. Thank you.
Madam Chair, for the record, Chancellor Rose, to you and through you to Senator Gansert. Thank you for that question. And I alluded to this in my opening remarks, and I appreciate the opportunity to elaborate. In higher education, as you all know, those of you who have been engaged with us for some time, there are well-established best practices, well-established of what we call high impact practices that have, national data sets behind them that demonstrate, for example, when you get the right ratio of students to advisors, for example, or the right classroom ratios, and a number of other supporting elements, that there is a demonstrable, easily predictable impact on retention and completion of our student population. And I'm glad that you have also noted and appreciated the improvements that have been made across the system at all of our institutions, especially in the last 3 years. And that is a direct outcome of the strategic investments that you all have been making. And so I think that's exactly the challenge that we're facing right now. And this, of course, goes to Senator Kekeffer's concerns. We're in a really good place with an upward trajectory. We know why those improvements are showing up in the numbers. And it makes us all nervous, as I'm sure it does all of you. That we would make changes that would disrupt that improvement or even see it decline. So we're at a tenuous moment. We will do everything in our power to protect students through this time. They are the reason we get up every day and do what we do. But, to the point made by Senator Kekeffer, when your budget is, roughly 80% people, there's almost nothing you can do that doesn't touch the student experience within a budget like that. It's a very people-driven industry. It's why we love it. And we will do our best with what we have, and we'll look forward to better days as they are available to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from any other committee members at this time? Not seeing anyone wishing to be recognized. Just one final comment for you all, and then we'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. So the homework that you submitted to, I believe this is an exhibit that was submitted. I get to give you a little bit of trouble because you didn't put your name on it. You have to put your name on your work, okay? If you don't put your name on your work, we don't know where it came from, right? I've always wanted to say that to a bunch of folks. So anyway, that made my day, probably my week. So I'm assuming it is from you, Mr. Klinger, and all of your folks. We appreciate that, but I just wanted to make sure for the record, everyone understands where this did come from. So that's good. So we thank you very much for being with us for these 2 meetings and making the time to answer all of questions. And I'm sure there will be many more questions coming forward. And as you provide the documents, there will be some follow-up that we will be doing either directly or through our staff to make sure that everyone is comfortable in the very tough decisions that are going to be made when it comes to all of our budgets that we have to go through. So with that, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. This will now be the time for public comment. It is about 9:30. I'll give it a couple of moments and then we will open it up for public comment. And just for public comment's sake, we ask folks to be mindful that it be 2 minutes and that it not be personal attacks, as there have been in emails of recent. We want legitimate public comment to come before the committee. We don't take things personally, and we don't like public comment to be personal. So with that, I'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll open it up to public comment. Thank you.
Chair Carlton, this is Michael from Broadcast. We have some folks in the queue already. Would you like me to get started with them, or do you want to wait a couple more minutes?
If we have folks in the queue, let's begin.
Thank you, I will. In order to make public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 837, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Kent Irvin, ERVIN, representing the Nevada Faculty Alliance, the Independent Association of Faculty at NSHE colleges and universities statewide. We work to empower faculty to be fully engaged in our mission to help students succeed. Our faculty and staff have worked really hard to maintain a positive learning environment for students while moving to remote instruction. Chair Carlton, Chair Dondera Loop, and committee members, thank you for working through the NSHE budget in these difficult times. I would like to address 3 points. First, at no cost to the general fund, we request that you start to fix our well-documented faculty salary compression and inversion issues by adding the requested back language to the Appropriations Act to permit the use of existing salary budgets for professional merit. This implements the NSHE Performance Pay Task Force recommendation to do this internal funding. This is very important to us to start a long-term process, even if it will be deferred by the regents during this budget crisis. Details are in our written exhibit. Second, we request funding at the GovRec level and then restore as much as possible with future federal American Rescue Plan funds or other available funds. The 12% cuts greatly exceed the temporary pandemic-related losses in enrollment, which were about 3 to 4% this year in terms of full-time equivalent student enrollments. During a public health crisis that has upended operations, is no time to be making ad hoc changes to the formula funding that is likely to cause unintended consequences in the distributions to the various institutions. With the rollout of vaccines, we are expecting enrollments to rebound due to pent-up demand. The colleges will need these caseload resources to serve students when they return. Finally, please make sure that the maintenance of effort requirements in the American Rescue Plan Act for both K-12 and higher education are met. It will be disastrous if those funds are lost. The cuts to the state budgets greatly exceed the expected federal dollars that can be used for institutional COVID-related expenses and which can't be used for continuing positions. The 12% cuts also exceed the historical attrition rate at our colleges and universities by more than 50%. So attrition alone doesn't get us there. Thank you for your consideration of these issues.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 853. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Doug Unger, D-O-U-G-U-N-T-E-R, Government Affairs Representative for Southern Nevada Faculty of the Nevada Faculty Alliance. Thank you, Chair Carlton, Vice Chair Dondera Loop, and members of the subcommittee. We are within 5 days of marking 1 year since the emergency transition of our schools from in-person to remote teaching because of the COVID-19 pandemic. During this upending of the way education has been conducted, please consider the hard work and resiliency of faculty, administrators, and especially our students and their families who have successfully adapted to safety concerns, relentless isolation, and financial stresses and hardships. We look forward to a gradual reopening of our campuses and to recovery. Faculty ask you to support this recovery, which we believe essential to our state, by 3 main recommendations. 1, to eliminate language retained from the 2019 budget template that prohibits performance pay and replace it with language that approves the use of funds for the 1% performance pools internal to our institutions, so at no extra cost to the state, so our schools can begin to address the issues of salary compression and merit awards for faculty retention. 2, to keep the funding formula with weighted student credit hours as counted for 2019-20, rather than moving calculations up to the pandemic year, as any resulting further cut in this manner, on top of the proposed 12%, will most hurt the community colleges, just when they will be most needed for workforce development, so may hinder our state's economy. And 3, we ask you to advocate to restore PEB benefits as much as possible from the ARP, especially long-term disability insurance, fundamental to our security as teachers, the loss of which would be demoralizing and so could distract from our efforts at recovery. Recovery is a process. With your support, we will continue our work to make this process happen. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 620. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Vermelius, ALYSSAFROMELIUS, and I'm the TNCC Student Government Association President. I'm speaking regarding the NSHE institution budgets presented today. Thank you for listening to my story. I have been at TNCC for 3 years and have seen firsthand the toll this pandemic has taken on the students and the college. As a community college, we serve a very special population of students. We have many first-generation, single parents, and other underserved populations. Due to our student populations, we sometimes require extra support in order for us to be successful in our college. As a first-generation student, it was quite a daunting task for me to enter college, even before the pandemic took effect. I can only imagine how intimidating it would be to attempt to enter college with a pandemic that has forced us to move online and with budget cuts that have forced the colleges to make difficult decisions. Yet the students use their strength and resilience to persevere in pursuit of their education. However, now we are facing the possibility of even deeper budget cuts. Our college has done their absolute best to make sure that the budget cuts do not affect the quality of the students' education and the resources available to them. Should you decide to pass further budget cuts for the colleges to endure, it would negatively affect student support services, which are critical to student success all over the state. Many of these students have already had to endure unemployment, the loss of family and friends, physical or mental illness, and a number of other issues. Further budget cuts would force these very students who attend college in spite of all these issues with even less support they've had in the past. Not only would these budget cuts affect our students, but they would also directly affect the economic recovery of the state post-pandemic. As a community college, we offer a great deal of workforce-focused classes. A cut to these support services will make current students less successful in these classes and discourage them from even attending college. A drop in enrollment, especially in our workforce-focused classes, will create a community of unskilled workers that would have otherwise been ready to enter the workforce should the college have been properly funded. Having a strong and capable workforce will be crucial for post-pandemic recovery. I sincerely hope you support the governor's budget of only a 12% cut to NSHE institutions for the good of the students and the good of the state. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 686. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
For the record, Laura, L-A-U-R-A, Nauman, N as in Nancy, A-U, M as in Mary, A-N-N. I'm the Faculty Senate Chair at Nevada State College. You have heard from our chancellor, presidents, and faculty and staff on the devastation that these cuts have to delivering high-quality instruction and offering support to our neediest students. We have one simple ask: no more cuts to higher education. Please accept the budget proposal included in the governor's recommended budget. In an article released yesterday, The Grapevine Higher Education Funding Report said that half of states have been able to maintain state appropriations for higher education with the help of federal stimulus dollars. However, Nevada ranks worst of the 21 states who still saw funding declines in fiscal year 2021, a whopping 17.8% reduction to the current fiscal year here in Nevada. Dr. Jim Applegate, editor of the report, states that, quote, "We must pay close attention to funding trends and their impact on equitable access to college success," end quote. This continued erosion of state support for higher education will only serve to damage the long-term quality of our education system, place greater financial burden on the backs of our students, and slow the prospects for Nevada's economic recovery. We urge legislators to prioritize restoring funding to higher education later in the session or in an upcoming special session once the state has necessary guidance to distribute state funding from the American Rescue Plan. These were the promises many legislators made to faculty, staff, and students last July when we were told that there was nowhere else to cut from but higher education. Let's work together to get Nevada off the worst of the worst list, especially as they relate to education. The success of our students and our state depends on it. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 750, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
My name is Amy Payson, AMYPASON, and I'm the Faculty Senate Chair at UNR. I submitted some written testimony, although I don't see it posted in the exhibit, and I want to reference that written testimony. It essentially is to say that in all of these budget numbers, what I see behind the numbers are people, because that is exactly what education is about. Education is about people interacting. It's about faculty interacting with students, advising them, guiding them, mentoring them, showing them how to use lab equipment safely. And so I want to thank Heidi Ganser in particular for recognizing that an investment in faculty and an investment in the people of a university is really what makes our education great at our campuses. I know that we had a lot of questions within this hearing just about where is research going? What's sort of the return on investment of these state dollars? And so I want to just underscore that the money that the state puts in, which is largely to pay for the salaries of faculty who are doing the teaching and research, as well as just the basic buildings and maintenance of those buildings so that we have a place to do that research, is all that we are asking when we ask for these budgets. But in return, it's those faculty that go out and get the extra grants, that get the grants that get equipment, that get the grants that help pay for student researchers or graduate teaching instructors. That's the multiplier that we see. And when those grants come in, it means that we can do the cutting edge research that we need, that we hope to see in the future more and more with UNR's partnership with Renown, cutting edge clinical medical research, so that our community members don't have to go to California to get the treatment that they might need. We need that infrastructure and that funding so that we can build the best teachers, build the best nurses, build the best social workers for our state. Just recently, I saw that one of our researchers in criminal justice has partnered with Washoe County Sheriff, working with them to also get grants so that we can improve our criminal justice system and do innovative practices within our jails. It's all of these things that just what the state puts in allows us to multiply and do better. So please keep in mind the people and these outcomes that we can provide to the state as part of your budget decisions. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 981. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Amaya, A-M-I-Y-A-H, Henley, H-E-N-L-Y. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm an education major student here at Nevada State College representing Nevada State Student Alliance. I understand that the budget is a difficult task to tackle and hammer out. However, when it comes to budget cuts, they affect students, faculty, and staff. Students see these effects when they see class sizes get larger and students' events get smaller due to funding. I picked Nevada State College because it was cheaper and the class sizes were smaller. This type of environment appeals to me and countless others, and we are thriving and achieving great things. Again, I understand how much work goes into a budget and tough decisions have to be made. However, education shouldn't have to feel the effects of them. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 475, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Thank you. For the record, Yvonne Allen, Yevonne Allen, Faculty Senate Chair at Truckee Meadows Community College. Good morning, Chair Carlton and committee members. I give comment today to provide a quick on-campus perspective regarding our budgets for this year and projected budgets for the biennium. With the current fiscal year budget cuts, all institutions have made needed reductions. TMCC has issued notices of non-renewal, offered a buyout program, and put forward cuts to student support services. But as Nevadans, we did it. Looking ahead to the biennium budget that you all are discussing, there will be continued sacrifice. 12% is significant. Programs aimed at addressing graduation and completion gaps for underserved and under-resourced students will not have the opportunity to expand to assist the most vulnerable populations that have been affected by this pandemic. We are thankful for our innovative faculty and staff and want to make sure that they have the technology, support, and resources needed for our disproportionately affected students. New academic programs are being put on hold, and we are asking our faculty and students to do more and more. It is very safe to say that any additional cuts will have an effect on student success. During a time when we are already preparing for a major 12% budget reduction, please do not look at additional budget areas to cut or change. Higher education is a reliable pathway for helping our state out of this pandemic. As Nevadans, we can do this together. Thank you all for the great work that you do for our state.
For callers that just joined the call, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue to make public comment. If you would like to make public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 838, please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You will have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Vicki, V-I-C-K-I, Rosser, R-O-S-S-E-R, UNLV Faculty Senate Chair, representing more than 4,000 administrative and academic faculty members. I really want you to know that we do understand the difficult budgetary decisions you all have to make. And please know that we are willing partners in this challenging endeavor. But as a reminder, UNLV did take more than its fair share of cuts this past summer. But most important are students, and to significantly contribute to the state's economic recovery and workforce development is paramount. To achieve these endeavors is through a very robust and highly qualified faculty, a faculty that cares deeply about our students' retention and persistence towards graduation, a faculty that brings in substantial research dollars to our students, institutions, and surrounding community, a faculty that helps to prepare our students to competitively contribute to a diverse workforce, and above all, a faculty who loves the people in the state. Thank you for your time.
Chair, the public comment line is open and working. However, we have no more callers at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcast Services. We appreciate that. Committee members, thank you for your time and attention. And to all of our presenters, we look forward to our future conversations. So with that, our meeting is adjourned.